With this video, I want to go over a push day today, the thought process, decision making, what goes behind it. So obviously, we're going to start with a warm up. So we can discuss warm ups, right? Hugely underutilized. A warm up is a chance to check all the systems that support what you're about to do are up and running to their full capability, right? So what I mean is, okay, we're doing an upper body session, the main joint of the upper body being the shoulder, correct? And the shoulder girdle, so the glenohumeral joint, the scapulothoracic joint. Does it do what it is supposed to do before we start doing the main thing? Specifically, is the joint mobile, is it stable, and is it strong? So with the shoulder joint, can you, without overextending through the lumbar, the ribs, get to 180 degrees and flex it out, okay? We'll start with the mobility portion of the warm-up. With the shoulder joint, mobility is complicated, okay? With the shoulder joint, mobility starts at the ribs. If the ribs can't articulate, then the thoracic spine can't articulate. If the thoracic spine can't articulate, the shoulder blade can't articulate. If the shoulder blade can't articulate, the shoulder joint can't articulate. You get me? So the point of that rant was make sure your ribs can move, so everything else can move before you start your upper body push day. So one of my favorite mid-rib mobility exercises, get a stick, any stick, get a box, any box, and we're just gonna drive down, okay, and then we're gonna drive up, and what we're trying to achieve here is some movement through the thoracic ribs. Okay, is that rib cage articulating nicely? If you're someone who does a lot of compound movements, squats, deadlifts, you're a power lifter, you're going to be compressed down, those ribs aren't going to articulate like they should, so your shoulder joint mechanics are going to be all skewed up. So the second portion of the kind of mobility bit is the thoracic spine. So thoracic spine refers to the 7 vertebrae in the middle of your spine. So these vertebrae are the ones that should articulate through extension and rotation. A lot of people, they don't do that because they sit down all day in these fixed positions. So there's many ways to improve thoracic mobility. There are many different exercises. One of my favorites is the called thread the needle. I'm gonna get a foam roller. I'm gonna move the coffee because it's coffee. Hand, hello, goes upside down. See why it's called thread the needle. We're gonna take a deep breath in and then push, actively push that shoulder blade and then pull that shoulder blade. And we're gonna breathe out and then in and then out and then in and then out. Moral of the story is always try and check and improve thoracic mobility before any upper body sessions. So with the shoulder joint, the main thing is, can you extend and externally rotate, okay? Those are the main things without compensating through the lower back, through the rib cage. Often, most of the time, the lats are the problem. They have a little bit of coffee, something we call the strongest internal moment arm, don't need to know it, nerd stuff. So what we want to do is use a bit of proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation. And if you don't fuck that up, you can kind of sound smart. What it means is we're going to get this band and we're going to do a kind of a push-pull thing to relax the muscles. So, shoelaces undone. Get a band, put your hand through the band. The lats work by, will have the most leverage the closer they are to the rib cage, so make sure that arms in, make sure you're not overextending. What we want to do, get some tension. We're going to push down that way, about 6 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And we want to relax. So you're taking advantage of something called reciprocal inhibition. If you push one muscle, the opposite muscle relaxes. That's what's going on here. So we're trying to increase the range of motion through the lats. Again, the lats are often the muscle that screws up people's posture, makes people more internal rotated. So that's one you should focus on if you want to improve people's posture and improve the range of joint of the shoulder. Again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and then relax. then come behind you. I'll do the other side. One thing I want to add is mobility is absolutely useless without stability. To be specific, stability is the ability to resist force in a simple term. So I'm about to show you probably the ultimate expression of the function of the shoulder joint in an exercise, because it takes a joint through its full range of motion, then demands that that joint needs to be stable. So it's called the bottom-up kettlebell press, personal favorite. We'll start here, ribs down, not compensating through extension. Do it side on, be a little bit better. And we want to up. That whole movement comes from the shoulder joint alone. And what I'm doing before my upper body session is I am testing and training the function of that shoulder joint through mobility and stability, okay? This one's a bit OP. So last on the docket for my warm-up routine is the cable face pull, and that because during your press movements, you're going to be extending, depressing, and retracting your shoulder blades to create more space in the shoulder joint to lift more weight. So we want to squeeze the bum, ribs down. All that movement comes through the shoulder joint, and the goal here is to do the function of the shoulder blades during our pressing movements, which is retraction and depression of the shoulder blades. They happen at the same time. So we're going to think about retraction, depression, pause, good, all the way back, retraction, depression, down, retraction, depression, retraction, depression. And what I'll do 2-3 rounds of that, and then, you know why I'm standing so close to the camera, and then I'll do 2-3 rounds of warm-up sets. So let's get into the main session, okay? So the first exercise up in this push J for me is the 45-degree angle Smith press with a mouthful. So why this exercise? Why this order? Why this exercise? Let's start there. When it comes to growing muscle, just growing muscle, we know that the more stable you are, the more force you can generate. The more force you can generate, the bigger stimulus you can create. So rather than like a barbell or a free weight, I've picked a machine because it's more externally stable, probably create a more precise stimulus to the muscle. Okay, why 45-degree? So this is just to me specifically, actually to most people, is upper chest tends to be most people's weaker area, and it has the most kind of visual difference. So obviously if we angle it at 45 degrees, it's gonna be more upper chest. The technique for this exercise, you do not have to touch your chest. You do not have to go down all the way. It's highly anatomical, individual. The way to find this out is you simply sit up like you're about to do a rep, and you pretend like you've got a bar, and you go down, and wherever you stop naturally, that's where you should stop. So for me, I'm about ½ an inch away from my chest. Anything more is something called a passive range of motion, and we'll be loading through passive tissues, the shoulder capsule, hyaline cartilage. Basically, there's a higher chance of you're going to get injured. So the point I want to make is test your active range and work within your active range, and anybody who says you have to touch the bar to the chest, I'll fight them. The last thing I want to say is the resistance curve of this exercise will dictate how I execute. What that means in human being English language is there are parts of this lift that are heavier than others. The bottom is much heavier to the muscle than the top, okay? So if I know the bottom's heavier, I know where that's the most stimulus. Where am I gonna pause? Where am I gonna emphasize that bottom position? So knowing where or which point of the resistance curve exercises match dictates your execution. It's a bit more complex, a bit more advanced, but it will yield better results. And again, I'll say this again, if you add that into your thought process and your consideration, you don't have to do as much, and you can still create a very big stimulus. Next up on the docket is a lateral cuff raise. We're going to emphasize the lateral head of the deltoids. So if you don't know, anterior, lateral, rear deltoids, the lateral deltoids make you look wham. They stand out, especially in vests, especially on the beach, with ice cream, bucket and spade. But I want to hammer this home. If you're someone who wants to grow their lateral delts and wants to make their shoulders look bigger, there's something you need to understand, and that is the scapular plane So most exercises are categorized through the kind of frontal plane, the coronal plane, or the transverse plane, okay? There's 3 planes of motion. Lateral delts sit in their own special plane. It's a secret, don't tell anyone. And that's called the scapular plane. Understand this, a lateral delt sits on the shoulder blade, on the scapula, but the scapula sits on the thorax at a slight angle, kind of like that. So if we can line up the channel of the exercise to the scapular plane, which is kind of like a gentle Y, we're going to recruit a lot more of those fibers. Let me show you. So rather than come straight out, okay, very, very gentle Y, and that's called the scapular plane. And I can already feel my lateral delt right there, okay? Use a bit of feel, that's okay. So also note the cable height is about knee height. This just means it's hard where it needs to be hard, and it's easy where it needs to be easy. A lot of people struggle with their lateral delts because a lot more goes on into it than you think. So stay in that scapular plane, play with resistance curve and the strength curve and the cable, okay? Right, I'm gonna blow your mind, okay? So this exercise is in my program not to grow muscle, but to keep my shoulder falling off my body. Think of it like a hygiene exercise. This is just, it doesn't matter what discipline you do, CrossFit, bodybuilding, rugby player, everyone should have an overhead press with a free weight in their program. This is more proprioceptively demanding. In human being language, that just means I'm challenging the stability of my muscle. I'm training the function of the joint. And that's what every functional exercise should do. You need to attach a band to your gooch for it or something like that. So, ribs down, up. All that movement is being expressed from the shoulder joint. When we do our rope tricep extensions, we want as long a rope as possible. Most ropes in the gym are like too short. The reason for that is quite simple. It's a principle-based approach, right? If you want to stimulate a muscle, you want to take it through its full range of motion. Does the implement you're using allow you to take the muscle through its full range of motion? When we look at the triceps, it isn't just this, okay? It's this whole rotation outwards. That is my tricep as short as it will get, which is where we want to get to. So we want to use a nice long rope. Then what we want to think about doing is with the triceps, you know, biarticular muscle, which just means it crosses the shoulder and the elbow, is we do want multiple like elbow positions in our programming. But we can actually hit every single head of the tricep in one exercise as long as we know our anatomy. And that is a long head of the tricep, the one that crosses the shoulder joint, attaches onto the scapula, abducts the arm. So the further away this is from the shoulder joint, the more long head involvement. So we can hit every single head, we can actually get a catch-all tricep exercise if we read our anatomy textbooks. So rather than tucking the elbows in, bring them out, see if you can see that here. AB, abduct them, and then from there, everything dead still, full extension, all the way up. Another thing I want to say is you don't have to change your wrist grip to hit different heads of the tricep, because that's not how the triceps work. The triceps attach onto what we call the ulna, which is the part of the kind of forearm that doesn't rotate. So everything you do with the triceps can stay at a nice neutral grip. That will allow us to lift the most weight and create the most stimulus. So yeah, if you want to maximize muscle growth, if you're a coach, PT, even a trainee, just understand anatomy. So this is the last exercise in my push day. There aren't a lot of exercises in my push day because it doesn't need to be. The more redundancy you can take out, the more precise you can be with your execution, your volume, the better results it will yield. More is not better. Anyway, ranting. So, chest fly. The actual function of the chest muscle, is to bring the arm across the body, okay? If we do that, we take out the anterior delts, we take out the triceps, so it's a really good isolation. Side note, if you are someone with a smaller rib cage, so a smaller chest, so we all know people when they walk into the room, their chest enters about 5 minutes before they do. Big barrel chest, right? A lot of people, especially men, have smaller rib cages, kind of more flat. If you find yourself, you're someone with a flatter rib cage, I'm not sure if you know him, but like, let's say Jack's Fitness, he will be better off doing flyers. And the reason for that is this is going to challenge the direction that his muscle fibers run much more than a press. I just said it, I want you to get this into your head, that not every exercise meets the same person the same, okay? We are built differently, so therefore exercise selection needs to follow that. So if you are someone with a smaller rib cage and you struggle to build your chest, go towards flyers. We want about chest height, so simply put your hands out. That's how you dictate your height, okay? That looks good for me. We want to stay in an active range of motion, so we just do a fake rep as far as our arms can take us. So I can probably go, one back from there. And because it's an exercise that is most difficult in the short position, fully contracted, that dictates our execution. And we want to think about pausing in that short position. So, bit of extension, don't overgrip, pause, emphasize where the most tension is. So if a Smith press is stretchy, this is shorty, much more of a squeezy, pausey one. Another thing I want you to see, the straightness of my elbows. The chest muscle goes from here to here, goes from here to here, okay, like that. So if I start bending my arms like this, I'm not shortening the pec, which is the whole point of the exercise. I want to think about upper arm coming into the middle of the body. Pause, keeping that chest nice and open. Pause, control. You have a slight bend in your arm, but again, anatomy will dictate setup and execution.